So, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me downstairs. My name is Georg Wittenburg, and since we're talking about data, I thought I'd even start with a slide. So let that sink in a bit. This is not a talk about environmental effects and climate change, but still it's a data analysis, right? And in the end, if you're talking about big data and AI, this is what it tends to be all about. We titled this talk Lessons from Analyzing All of Europe's Data, because sort of this is what we did. And I will explain all of that in a second. The talk was supposed to be given by Dr. Guillaume Aimetti and myself. Guillaume Aimetti excuses himself. He had a family emergency at home. He'd love to be here, but I'll just try to fill in for that. Since we have a rather intimate crowd this morning here, who would like to raise his hands and say, what do you see on the slide? Not everyone at once.
Yeah, so it's a water level. It's the level of the water, I suppose.
Yeah, so that's the water level of the River Rhine at Düsseldorf in the summertime, when it's getting lower and lower. And this is also with the news that we had this summer all over, that there's a drought in Germany. And in the end, you could have seen this coming from the data. So this is a data set that is actually not on data.europa.eu, which is the data repository of the European Union, but this is a data set from data.gov. It's a rather simple data set, right? So this is a data set collected by the city of Düsseldorf, which measures the water levels in the River Rhine every year, right? And so the slide that I've just shown is the analysis of that. There's a data portal that collects all of Germany's public data. There's a data portal that collects all of Europe's public data. And they have a lot of data sets. So 62,000 data sets in Germany being collected as public data. 1.5 million data sets of public data being collected across Europe, paid by your tax euros. Right? So this is all the data that we're publicly collecting. So you might ask yourself, so what? So yeah, Germany and Europe, they're both building data lakes. What gives, right? Isn't everyone who works at a company that is building a data lake or has built a data lake in the past? 1, 2, right, yeah. Okay, so have you ever asked yourself the question, what does it take to analyze all of your data lake? Because in the end, this is what Europe and Germany are saying. Like, we got all this data, we don't have it there for nothing. In the end, we want to analyze it because otherwise it's useless. So what is actually the cost of analyzing one entire data lake? And here's just a back of the envelope calculation. Assume you have a data lake with 10,000 data sets, and assume that you have an analyst who does an exploratory data analysis of each of these data sets. Takes about, maybe 3 days. Then you get about 68 data sets per year, which means that in order to analyze all of your data lake, you would need about 147 person years. And at the current salary levels, that would cost you about 8 million euros. And this is just a fraction of the data sets that we have in Germany and Europe. So the question is, who's going to pay for the analysis? Right? Just having the data doesn't help unless you analyze it. And this is our take on analyzing all of Europe's data. In the end, you can't do it by hand. So the question really is, can you automate the analysis of all of that data that Germany and Europe have collected? And we think you can. This is a prototype that we built last year. It was running earlier this year. And this is a system, I'll go a bit into the details in a second, that is actually autonomously analyzing data sets. So in the end, this system, what it did is it went to the website of data.europa.eu or data.gov in Germany, says, give me a data set automatically. Let's try to understand that data set automatically. Let's analyze whatever was being understood. Let's put the result on a slide and say, this is what the system thinks this data set is all about. What should be noteworthy about that data set, right? So it's a system that autonomously, and autonomously is like the autonomous car, the car that doesn't need a driver. That's the system that doesn't need a data scientist. That autonomously reasons about previously unknown structured or semi-structured data. We don't do completely unstructured data yet. Just like a data analyst would. And of course, we didn't do this for one data set, as I'm showing in this example, but we did it for the entire repository of Germany. And actually, we did it for data.europa.eu as well, and data.gov in the US. And if anyone is in the data science community, then you may have heard of Kaggle. Kaggle is a repository that has data sets that are used for honing in your data science skills. That was analyzed just as well, right? And because we got a huge influx of people right here, right now, please come on all in. I'm so glad you're joining. I'll give you the recap of the talk up until now in a minute. But find a seat, please. Okay, thanks. Thanks you all for joining. So you have hardly missed anything. This talk is about autonomously analyzing data. So I've just given the introductory example of taking one data set from a public data repository like data.europa.eu, plugging it into a system that automatically reasons about that data to suggest what could be interesting about that data set. And the example on the right-hand side here is an analysis of a data set from the city of Düsseldorf, who are measuring the water levels in the River Rhine, and the trend detection and saying the water levels keep on dropping. That has been done without any human intervention. So the entire results of that are online. So we have a nice page that is called analysis2.ai, which has all the collected data sets from these repositories, but also has the results for these repositories. And if you actually would browse around them, this is what they look like. And I know it's a bit small, but I'll just walk. Oops. I'll just point out, yes, this is not only time series. This is also geoanalysis. This is the standard statistical aggregations. So there's many, many analyses that are just derived automatically straight from the data sets and are just being available on the internet right now. We were very, very happy and a bit surprised when the results, not the data sets, but the results were starting to be indexed by Google. So you actually will find these analyses as search results on Google now if you look for the specific content. So there's many questions one could ask about autonomously analyzing lots and lots of data sets. Here's 3 of them. What did you find in all of that data? How does it work? Are the results any good? Right? So how much time do I have left?
Around 7 minutes, I'd say.
So we won't cover all of that, right? What did you find in all of that data? We regularly publish some of the more interesting results that we actually find in these data sets on our Twitter channel of the system. Say, here's something that was found in one of these public data sets. So I won't go into the details of that, but feel free to check it out. We try to be both funny where applicable and serious where necessary. There's a good mixture there. How does it work? How do you actually analyze a data set without human intervention? Well, the best analogy that I can give you is that analyzing a data set is quite a bit like playing chess. Right? So if you ever play chess, maybe against the computer, you'll know that the computer reasons about the game. Right? So the computer has the rule book for the game of chess. The computer knows which moves are legal, which moves are not legal. And then the computer can make a sequence of moves that hopefully will beat you. Right? And data analysis is quite a bit like that. There is not an explicit rule book to data analysis. But if you ask any statistician or data scientist, there's a bunch of implicit things that you will know what is allowable and what is not allowable. And there is the entire rule book of statistics. For any method, you'll find the necessary prerequisites that need to be fulfilled in order for that method to be applicable. Right? So in the end, analytics, analyzing structured data, can be thought of quite similarly as computer chess. It's a sequence of rules that are being applied to data, and in the end, you'll arrive at something that is an analytical result that is valid and hopefully also relevant. The last part about relevance, this is where the system at all times still will depend on a human. Right? So the system can autonomously apply the rules of analyzing data to any data set it will find, but judging whether a particular insight is relevant to you or to your boss, right? That's always in the eye of the beholder. For that reason, the ranking and the sorting of the results tends to depend on the human, but interestingly, it can be learned. right? So in the end, we think that data analysis can be split into playing a game of chess, and then afterwards recommending insights like Amazon recommends products. So if you know what kind of insights you liked in the past, the system will recommend what you might like in the future. I have included a technical architecture slide in here. I will not go into the details of that, but feel free to ask me if you're so inclined. I'm happy to go into the exactly inner workings of this. This is a hybrid expert system, so it's a rule-based system that consists of about 420 classifiers. These classifiers model the expert knowledge of analyzing a data set as a data analyst or a data scientist would. They reason under uncertainty, so there's actually within those classifiers you will have the typical neural networks that help with classification. So it's a hybrid architecture that does the analytical reasoning that takes you from structured raw data to ranked insights, which is basically from left-hand side to right-hand side on this slide. So, but are the results any good, right? And I would have to bring that question back to the audience. So what makes up a good analytical result? In my experience, there's two key factors, and I guess we can discuss about this after the talk. There's two key factors what makes a good analytical result. How much did you pay for it, and how fast did you get it? So is anyone in the audience who works in professional services as a consultant? What is your hourly rate? I'm just kidding, right? But the point that I'm making here, but thanks. Right? But the point I'm making here is that basically, if you ask someone to analyze a data set for you, you will be looking at these two dimensions. You'll be saying, well, how long will it take? How much do I have to pay that guy, right? And basically, are they willing to work overnight? And if you need someone that works overnight, then you will go to and hire McKinsey or someone like that, because then they will work every night and every day for you, hopefully, right? Well, the point being here is that, yes, so a typical data analysis for a human data analyst takes in the order of magnitude of days, maybe weeks. And it will cost you, well, the annual salary of a data scientist is maybe between 60 and 80K a year, depending where you hire, where you're located, whether you're outsourcing, whether it's a consultancy agreement. Of course, everyone would love to be in the top right corner. Say, I want to deliver the most valuable insights immediately, right? So could I have, please, of the top data scientist, the insight that he would provide in a fraction of a second? So here's our trajectory with the system that we've been developing over the past 6 years. So we believe that. So this was the first time that we're actually presenting it at Big Data AI Summit 2017 with a project with Deutsche Bahn. We were in the order of magnitude of weeks, so it was still rather slow, right? It wasn't fully automated at the time. There was still manual work required. And I still feel it was very kind that these guys came on stage with us, but because the results, quite frankly speaking, were not that good at the time, but it was reasonable. We did a project 2 years later with BNP Paribas, which was good. Actually, the system worked in a couple of days, and it was detecting fraud in the banking data of BNP Paribas, a largest bank in the world. Fraud that was at the time unknown to to the risk management team at the bank. Right? So that was something we presented 3 years ago. Today, I'm making the point that you can actually analyze a whole data repository in a matter of seconds or minutes per data set. The run for data.europa.eu, which covered all the CSV files and all the reasonably structured Excel files, because Excel files can be a mess, from data.europa.eu, took 8 days in total. It covered 140,000 data sets. Right? So we had an average run time per data set of about 4 minutes. This was because you could scale it out, right? So we were, thanks to Microsoft, if there's anyone from Microsoft in the room, thank you so much for sponsoring this. We were running with, I think, 256 instances in parallel on Azure, just kind of chewing through the entire data set for every data set, finding what is the most important thing in that data set. If you want, but this only pushes us to the right-hand side, so this makes us more scalable. Luckily enough, today, this afternoon actually, at 4:20, There's a talk that we'll be giving with Kantar Public. Kantar Public is maybe to some more known as Infratest, the guys who do the election forecasting. And there you can possibly assess how relevant, how helpful those insights are, because that's the topic of that talk this afternoon. So this morning was about scalability. The level of insight is this afternoon, and you're all cordially invited to join me and Mr. Schniedermeyer from Kantar Public right here at 4:20. With that said, my closing point. So what are the lessons from analyzing all of Europe's data? I think there are three major lessons to be seen here. Data analysis can be automated, just like playing chess was automated 20 years ago. And I say 20 years ago because that's the time when the world champion Garry Kasparov was beaten by IBM Deep Blue, right? And we actually don't have to beat the best data scientist in the world for this to be economically reasonable. We just have to beat the person that you can hire off the street to analyze your data. That's how good it needs to be economically viable. The second point, the automation scales to tens of thousands of data sets per day. Right? So actually, you can ask questions, what are the insights from my entire company's SharePoint? Right? It's not about looking at one table in one database. No, you can just say, here's the SharePoint, or here's the Dropbox, here's basically all the data that my company has. Let's have a look at it. And third, I think without putting myself too much into a corner here, I think by now the level of quality that the analysis reaches is that of a junior data analyst. So basically anyone who's still doing manual pivoting of data, who's looking for time series trends, who's looking for outliers, who's looking for correlations in data, all of that can be comfortably automated by now. And so if anyone is still doing that by hand, there is something that would be, I guess, supporting you in the future. With that said, I hope I'm staying more or less in time. I hope there's some time for questions. Thank you so very much for coming down and attending. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Georg, for being our first speaker on the stage, and welcome to the audience. I'm so glad to see that this room filled up, because it was quite sad to see only 2 people when you started, but luckily this is recorded, so for everyone who missed the first bits and pieces, feel free to also check it out on our YouTube channel in the following days. My name is Kimberly. I'll be your moderator for today and tomorrow. Unfortunately, we do not have time for questions on stage now, but you'll stick around because you just announced that you'll be on stage later this evening. So I'm sure you're up for individual questions and follow-ups right after your talk.